murdered, and the killer gets away with the murder because he has no idea that he is the killer. So how cool is that? He gets away with it because he has no clue he's the killer. I can't think of the name of the book right now, but I'm sure somebody else in here has read it. Maybe you can help me out. It's got a little picture of a cross on the front. The Bible. Oh, thank God. See, look. We are there, okay? Me and one other person. I recommend that you guys all read it. It's an amazing book. I know you guys read the Bible. But it's an amazing book. You know what? It's awesome. It reads like fiction, but it's actually a true story. Go figure. Best-selling book. In the story, a man named Jesus Christ is brutally tortured and murdered for claiming to be God. Right? And it's amazing because he's tried, he's convicted, and he is beaten with a weapon called a cat of nine tails. It's a whip. Well, basically, at the end of it, it frayed out, and there were, stones and metal and glass shavings at the end of it. And every time they would whip him, it would claw into his back and rip the skin off until his back looked like hamburger meat. Right? And then what would happen is they pulled his beard out after he was convicted, and they made him carry this giant cross. He had to walk this thing all the way up to the top of a hill called Calvary. Right? This hill's right on the outskirts of Jerusalem, right outside of the wall of Jerusalem. So it wasn't a quick walk. And by the time he got to the top and he was exhausted, they put him on this cross and they nailed his hands and feet to the cross and they hung him there until he died. Right? Now, history has shown us that this man was innocent. He did not deserve any of that. So the question isn't, was this a crime? The question is, who is really responsible for what happened to that man right there on the screen? Right? We say, who really killed Jesus? Hashtag who done it? Well, tonight, I will be a prosecuting attorney, which is why I'm dressed like this, and you all are going to be my jury. Is that okay? Can we do that?
Yep.
All right, we will finally get to the bottom of who really killed Jesus Christ tonight. Ah, whoop. Ah, whoop. Ah, whoop. All right, let me see. So, as I look through these files, this is the case file. As I look through the case file here, it says the death of Jesus Christ was ordered and executed by a Roman named Pontius Pilate. We'll just assume this is the stand. Pontius Pilate, that's him right there. Pilate was a Roman prefect. Prefect was a military leader chosen by high-ranking Roman officials to govern over the land of Judea. The Bible's very clear that Pilate ordered the death of Jesus Christ, but the question is why. Let's go to the book of John, chapter 13, verse 5 through 8. Okay, in verse 5 through 8 it says, When Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, Pilate said to them, "Here is the man." As soon as the chief priests and their officials saw him, they shouted, "Crucify! Crucify!" But Pilate answered, "You take him and crucify him. As for me, I find no basis for charge against him." The Jewish leaders insisted, "We have a law, and according to that law, he must die, because he claimed to be the Son of God." When Pilate heard this, he was even more afraid. Now see, that's awesome. Okay? Fear is an awesome motivator for murder. And I think with just the information we have right now, I asked the jury, raise your hand if you think that is enough to convict Pontius Pilate of this murder so we can go home. I done got no hands. Apparently I'm the only one who wants to go home. Everybody else wants. Okay, well, you know what? Let's read along. Maybe there's some more information that I overlooked. Let's see. It says, we look at verses 12 through 16. There we go. Verses 12 through 16, it says, "From then on, Pilate tried to set Jesus free." What? Wow. "But the Jewish leaders kept shouting, 'If you let this man go, you are no friend of Caesar. Anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar.' When Pilate heard this, he brought Jesus out and sat down at the judge's seat at a place known as the Stone Pavement, which is in Aramaic is Gabbatha. It was the day of the preparation of Passover. It was about noon. 'Here is your king,' Pilate said to the Jews. Can we keep going? But they shouted, 'Take him away! Take him away! Crucify him!' 'Shall I crucify your king?' Pilate asked. 'We have no king but Caesar.' The chief priests answered. Finally, Pilate handed him over to them to be crucified." Wow. Look at the person next to you and just say, "Wow."
Wow.
All right. Now look at him. Now say it backwards. Wow, right? Wow. You know what? I'm kind of blown away. So, yes, okay, the Romans physically killed Jesus. But that verse proves that they were only the instrument of his murder. They weren't the cause of his murder. So that would have to lead us to our next suspect. Our next suspect, Mr. Caiaphas. Caiaphas is the Jewish high priest of the high priest of the committee of the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin was a political collection of Pharisees and Sadducees who loved God's law more than they loved God. In Matthew chapter 26, verses 3 and 4, it says, "Then the chief of priests and the elders of the people assembled in the palace of the high priest, whose name was Caiaphas. And they schemed to arrest Jesus secretly and kill him." Now we're getting somewhere. You know what? Actually, we're getting to the point where I'm going to take this jacket off before we get I think we might be able to wrap this one up. That's right. Take a picture. Tell Dave. Let him know. That's right. Say, turn into Magic Mike, Dave. The servant turned into Magic Mike.
Oh, no.
So, Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin, they despised Jesus for claiming to be God. They tried to discredit Jesus at every turn, every possible way, but he was too godly to fall for their tricks. It wasn't until Jesus finally healed the sick man on the Sabbath that the Sanhedrin finally decided that Jesus had to die, and he had to die right away. They couldn't wait any longer. What do you say, jury? Was Caiaphas and the Jews and what they did, the information you just got, was that enough evidence to convict them for being the ones who really killed Jesus? Not enough yet. Okay. Well, I thought it'd be at least a hung jury, but we have just me. I'm the only one. All right, well, let's see. Wow, you know what? So yes, the Jews, they plotted. They succeeded in killing Jesus. But before that, they failed at every attempt. How do you capture a man who is always one step ahead of you? How do you capture a man that can see everything before it happens? There's just no way that the Jews could have handed Jesus over to the Romans without help, and they needed help from somebody who was close to Jesus. And as I think about it, you know what? They needed help from our next suspect, a man named Judas Iscariot. There he is. Good old Judas. Oh, yeah, he looks like he didn't do it. That's not a guilty face. Judas was one of the 12 disciples, handpicked by Jesus Christ himself. He was their treasurer, which meant that his only responsibility was to manage the money and follow Christ. In Matthew chapter 26, verses 14 through 16, it says, "Then one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and asked, 'What are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you?' So they counted out for him 30 pieces of silver. From then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him over." Finally, people of the jury, I believe we have the last piece of this murder puzzle. As guilty as he looks, aside from all of that, we've got enough evidence to convict him, and he even took the money, okay? Who would raise their hand and say that Judas Iscariot essentially is the real killer for Jesus Christ? I got somebody. Finally, somebody. Okay? We're together on this. But we got to get the rest of the jury, so I don't know. But there is that situation. Judas knew. And it's crazy. Judas knew that Jesus knew that he would betray him. Right? Judas knew that Jesus knew. Judas knew that the rest of the apostles would eventually know that he betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. Why would he take that risk? Right? Why would he take the risk of betraying somebody as powerful as Jesus for 30 pieces of silver? I can't imagine him doing that, incriminating himself on his own. You know what? Let's go to John chapter 13, verse 2. Let's see what it says. All right. It says, the evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. The devil. The devil. You know what? Okay. So Judas was prompted to betray Jesus. Why didn't I think of this before? What one living thing in this world would hate Jesus so much, or want to hurt him or harm him so much more than anything else on the planet other than the devil himself? Satan, our next suspect. It's got to be Satan.
Yeah.
There he is. Now tell me that's guilty. Okay, if he walks, there's something wrong with the judicial system. I don't know. But you've got Lucifer, the devil himself, the fallen angel, sent down to earth to steal, kill, and destroy. If anybody had the motive and the resources to kill Jesus, it would have been him. In fact, it now sounds like an open and shut case to me. Hopefully I can get out of here a little early, go to IHOP. We might get, y'all can come with me to IHOP, it's right across the street. Well, you know what though, now I think about it. Sorry, you have a question?
Yeah, why that devil like to hurt people?
You know what? I was thinking about that. And you know what? As I look into history, I think back to the devil and God's friend Job. Right? The devil put Job through everything. He tortured Job. He took everything away from Job, but he had to have permission from God to do it. And he wasn't allowed to touch one hair on Job's head, which is crazy because it's like, okay, well, the devil can't do anything without God's permission. And I also think back to after the supper, right? Well, not the supper, the baptism. After Jesus was baptized, he was in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. If the devil wanted to harm Jesus, that would have been the best time to do it. There were no witnesses, right? And he basically tempted Jesus to sin, but Jesus didn't sin. And the devil couldn't harm Jesus then when there was no one else watching. So it seems like the devil could not have harmed Jesus without commission from God himself. It's what it looks like to me, so I can't really blame this on the devil. But now that that just really leads me to our next suspect, which I'm kind of afraid to bring on the stand, but I guess we have no choice. I think God himself would have to be our next suspect. I'm actually a little nervous putting God on the stand. I hope my car is still outside when we get done with this. Okay? Oh my goodness. I hope a bolt of lightning doesn't come in here. You guys are all safe. God himself would have to commission the devil to harm Jesus in order for it to happen. God the Father, Yahweh, the creator of all things, I am that I am. In John chapter 3, verse 16, very famous verse, it says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life." God is a good God. His Son was sinless. Jesus did not deserve death, and God still allowed him to die. But I also know that God was a just God, and he would not have Jesus die if it wasn't absolutely necessary. Which leads me to think, okay, wait a minute, why was it absolutely necessary for God to have Jesus killed? We have to go all the way back to the beginning of time for that answer. We're going to head all the way back to creation, back to the Garden of Eden, where we're going to find another couple named Adam and Eve. Adam was the very first man. See, that's them. Look how convenient the letters cover everything up. Thank you. Slide team, that's awesome. Adam was the very first man. Eve was the very first woman. They lived together in the Garden of Eden, and everything they did pleased God. Until one day, with a little help from the devil, Eve decided to eat the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge. Her disobedience brought sin into the world, and Adam joined her in eating the fruit. He made his choice, and for the next 4,000 to 5,000 years, sin would separate man from God. In Isaiah chapter 53, verses 4 through 5, it says, "Surely he took up our pain and bore our suffering. Yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed." There should be a little bit more. Is that the end of it? Okay. Okay, by his wounds we are healed. Only the blood of a sinless man could redeem mankind and reunite God with his creation, the one that he loves most. People of the jury, you know what? I think we had it all wrong. Some of you might have had it right, but I'm glad you didn't ruin it with a spoiler alert. I believe we finally have enough evidence to convict the murderer who really killed Jesus Christ. The murderer was us. If the band could come back up right now, it'd be awesome. I'd appreciate that. You know what? We, all of us, are mankind. Right? We are the bride of Christ. We are the creation that God so loved that he sent Christ to die in John 3:16. In Romans chapter 5, verse 8, it says, "But God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were yet still sinners, Christ died for us. His blood paid for all sin, past, present, and future. He knew exactly what would happen. He knew he'd have to suffer, yet he still chose to die anyway." There is no greater love than that. There is no greater love than what Jesus Christ did. Right now, I want everybody to take a moment. I want you to look at your life, right, for just a moment. I want you to think about everything you have been through. I want to think about everything you survived. And I want you to understand that it wasn't all for nothing. All right? God loves you that much. He loves you that much. And one of these days, God is going to come back and he's going to claim what's his. The only question left in this trial is, are you his? That's it. Are you his? God bless you. Are you his?